Good morning. Well, every year, no matter what center I'm serving, I always ask my singers to sing that song because it's such a beautiful statement about consciousness that every child has their own being, their own soul, their own God-given talents and skills. And to know that is the great gift of conscious parenting, to bring it out of the child. You know, children aren't little lumps of clay that we mold into things. They come fully orbed, ready to express themselves. And it's up to us as parents to recognize that and allow it to happen. It's not always easy, is it? So God bless the parents, too. They got their own. It's all consciousness. And when we allow a child to be who they really are, they learn to trust themselves. And that's really important. It's really key to living a life, an authentic life that really reveals who we are. We have to be able to trust our instincts, trust our intuition, trust something. And so today's talk is your trust story. In May, we're doing a theme of storytelling. And we all tell stories all the time about reality and who we are in it. But I Googled the word trust just to see if there were some interesting quotes that I might want to share with you before we get into the talk. And I found several. It says, you can't trust a promise someone makes while they're drunk, in love, hungry, or running for office. Probably true. And Albert Einstein said, whoever is careless with the truth in small matters cannot be trusted in important matters. How can we trust the harvest unless we have seen it sown? That's really applicable to our teaching. How can we hope and want for something if we haven't put it in motion, if we haven't expressed it, if we haven't claimed it, named it, and spoken our word in trust that it must be seen and known? Only trust someone who can see these three things in you: the sorrow behind your smile, the love behind your anger, and the reason behind your silence. Trusting you is my decision. Proving me right is your choice. And the last one, I got trust issues because people got lying issues. We all got issues. So on our used book table, which has been a really wonderful little fundraiser for us, I got some really good books myself. I picked up one that I read back in I think the 80s. Have you ever reread a book and gotten more out of it the second time? Yeah. That's kind of what happened with this one. It's a tremendous book. It's called The Cosmic Egg. The Crack in the Cosmic Egg, and it's written by Joseph Chilton Pearce, who also wrote The Magical Child. He's a beautiful human being, he was, and very involved with the meditation movement as well. But briefly, it's about our individual and collective stories that we tell to define reality. And he calls our collective story our cosmic egg, which has a shell, which contains the story, but it also contains us in the story. And when new ideas are introduced, and then let's talk about a really transformational idea, a new idea, something we hadn't thought of before, or that has been fomenting and has come to the surface. He says that new idea will create a crack in the egg. And that's an opening. And something will emerge. It also lets the light in. You know, when a baby chick gets ready to be born, it has to kick itself out of that shell, right? It has to do it on its own, otherwise it won't be able to stand up. Its legs won't develop the muscles. So when culture, society, a people, a movement, such as New Thought movement or the meditation movement, has gained energy and is moving through individual lives, and people are catching it, the crack allows us to come out of that shell a little bit. Of course, the first thing we do when we get out of the shell is create a new one, right? A new cosmic egg. That's the nature of humanity, is constantly creating new stories to define who we are, what this universe is, what our place in it, and everything that goes with that. So this teaching is in the egg cracking business. And so are you. when you go out into the world and express yourself in ways that may be a little different from the group you're in. It's an opportunity and it's a blessing for us to speak our truth. For example, you might say something, when someone says something very limiting, you might say, that has not been my experience. You see, you don't have to be rude and you don't have to be sarcastic. It's just that I haven't experienced life that way. And they might ask you, well, how do you experience it? And you get a chance to tell them, well, I think things are generated from within us. I think we have a lot to say about what happens to us. And maybe they'll ask some more questions. But sometimes those simple things are very provocative to people. They haven't ever thought that way before. So science is also meant to be in the egg-cracking business, and quantum physics certainly is. It's cracking the science egg all the time. In fact, Niels Bohr, one of the greatest quantum physicists that ever lived, said one time, I wish I'd never heard of this quantum stuff, because it just smashed all of the old ideas about physics. And even Einstein couldn't do it. He couldn't go there. It was too innovative, too new, too strange. Some of them said, you know, the universe is stranger than you can imagine, and stranger than you're capable of imagining. And so even scientists have trouble when there's a crack in their egg, when ideas are shifting. But this is what the human potential movement has been about since the 60s, is bringing forth new ideas about us, about who we are as human beings, as spiritual beings having a human experience, and what exactly does that mean to us? It's what the civil rights movement was about. It's what the meditation movement has been about, opening us up to a bigger story than the one we've been telling ourselves. So for our purposes here today, we want to look at the cosmic egg in ourselves, the one that we've created, the personal cosmic egg that we're walking around in, and see if we can't cause a crack in it if it's not serving us at the highest levels that we might be served. In other words, are we producing enough love in our lives? Are we happy with it? Are we feeling some joy and some ease and some peace? Are we prospering? Is our body healthy and vital? If not, maybe we need to tell a bigger story about ourselves. Maybe we need to crack that egg a little bit. So today is your trust story, and let's ask ourselves, who or what does my story tell me I can trust? For some people, and probably nobody here, but it's good to consider it, we might be thinking that we can trust luck, or chance, or genetics, or heredity, or the economy, or God in the sky. That could come from the old story that we were told, and maybe we haven't looked at it recently enough to create the crack in it and to move on. There's family legends. Everybody has family legends that we might be carrying on without even knowing it. You know, sometimes they're just hiding in the background. He wrote in his book, the language of fantasy, which is story, goes before the language of facts. So that's true of inventions that become real. You know, like but in the 60s when Kennedy said, let's put a man on the moon before the end of the decade, something like that, and they did it. It was a crack in the scientific belief of what was possible. So spaceships became ordinary, rocketry became ordinary in our culture because someone had a new idea. Inventions of all kinds. The internet. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we can all remember when we didn't have such a thing, and now it's hard to imagine not having it, right? It's innovative. It's completely different than the way we used to communicate with each other. So these transformational ideas are just as true about our inner beliefs as they are about inventions. The stories we're telling ourselves are always limited. It just is, because we're meant to keep thinking beyond what we've known before. So if we're not doing that, then our story is going to be limiting us in some way. Okay, here's another family legend. Maybe you can identify with some of you. The family legend could be about, let's say, two old relatives who died of the same disease. And you were told that story early on as a kid. You know, Aunt Susie and Uncle Joe both had cancer. And so you've been advised, you've heard it over and over, and so you're susceptible to the same fate, you're told. So you need to watch out for it, and you need to take care of yourself, and you need to get checked every year, and you need to do this and don't do that. It's a part of the family legend. It's a story. I had a friend who, she died at age 40 from ovarian cancer. Her two aunts had it, and she told me that her whole life she was told she was going to die of ovarian cancer at age 40, and by God, if she didn't do it. And she wasn't in this teaching. She was a customer. I was a hairdresser then, and she was one of my customers. And she just firmly believed that was the only thing that could possibly have happened to her. It's serious, what the stories we carry, because we know that consciousness is creative, and what we believe tends to outpicture in our life. So we grow up with a consciousness, maybe of fear of a certain kind of people, or a fear and dread about something. And that, like I said before, it could be in the background. It's not like it's running our life, but it could be robbing us of more freedom. It could be robbing us of a richer life, as that's kind of lurking around in our consciousness. But because of the nature of consciousness to outpicture itself, we might be making things come to be without even consciously knowing we're doing it. And hasn't that happened to all of us, where we'll say, I don't know how this happened to me. I wasn't thinking this. But it could be part of an old legend, an old story that you brought forth from childhood. So for us to find the crack in the cosmic egg, someone has to lay an egg or lay a new idea on us. The first time I walked into one of these centers in 1975, my egg was not only cracked, it broke open. I mean, the whole old story came running out. And I heard a new story of humanity. I heard a new story about God. I heard a new story about what's possible for human beings. And it was then I realized how limiting the old story had been. I didn't even know I was limiting myself until I heard the new story. I had something to look at that made me rethink what I used to believe. It was really almost magical how that happened. The old story had been not just for me, but for everybody there. Everybody here has had an old story that has been somehow altered by this teaching. Would you agree? Yeah. We could call it transformed. I mean, sometimes it's major, and sometimes it's incremental. Over time, you come, you take classes, you make friends with people, you share stories, you give each other, you could say, testament to things that have occurred because of you change your thinking. So over time, and then you look back and you think, I can't believe I used to believe that stuff. I can't believe how different my life is now. And it just sort of unfolded. It's because it's a constant retelling a story, telling a new story and expanding on it. Now, it's very natural to seek a rationale for limitation. And that's what all of us do. And when we find that it's not even part of nature's nature, but a story we brought with us, it's like, I forget who said it, we discover fire for the second time. It's like, oh my God, life is completely different than I thought it was as far as how things happen. Something psychological that we need to be aware of is the tendency of the mind to honor the family story. It has to do with respecting our parents, or respecting the religion they gave us, or respecting the culture we came from. I've talked to so many people over the years that have found it really difficult to let go of some of the family beliefs because they were so entrenched and they were so much a part of their family life. And even if they didn't agree with them, they just couldn't let go of it. It seemed like they were dishonoring their family. Lots of times people from different religions will come to one of our centers for a long time and still go to their other church for a while. And that's fine. We're fine with that. But eventually one or the other will call them more strongly, and they'll either return to the old way. Usually they don't, and they'll start taking classes and really get into this new way of seeing the universe and new story that we're telling. So even we begin to sense the limitations of our family stories. We might make excuses. We might say, well, it was just how I was raised. I can't really change it. It just feels disloyal. It feels disloyal to somebody or something if we want to change how we see everything. So what we have to remember is that everyone has been told a story that's not true. Every single human being on the planet has been told a story that isn't true because it's not big enough. They've been told a story about the universe, about God, about women, about men, about different ethnicities. Every story that has a limitation to it is a lie. It's not truth. And, Ernest Holmes, who founded this teaching, he called false beliefs lies that we've been telling ourselves. So what I'm encouraging us to do, and this is, as I said last week, this is without self-recrimination. This is not beating ourselves up. It's knowing that there is, behind all the machinations of mind, there is this beautiful being, there is a spiritual being that really is unlimited. And it is that self that we sense when we imagine, when we dream, and when we know that there's more to us than we've been giving and we've been expressing. And just to take as if we are that self looking at what this local mind has been believing, and just say, have I been cavorting with lies? Have I been telling myself something that's not true? And am I willing to just stop doing that? When I first came into this teaching, I wasn't particularly entrenched in any religious belief, but like anybody born into Western culture, you get a certain Christian, Judeo-Christian point of view. Just it's part of our culture. But I didn't have a lot of it. But even so, I realized how radical this felt to me compared to what even non-believers believed. A lot of non-believers believe that everything's psychological, everything's mental, and everything is either a random act of nature, but they don't necessarily believe that we actually are creating our own experience. That's a radical idea, and a very challenging idea, because, like I say all the time, and I tell myself, there are layers of beliefs, and that's why we want to take a look at some of them. Take kind of an inventory of, what have I been telling myself lately? You would ask yourself today, what's my trust story? Who do I think I can trust? What do I think I can trust? Do I actually think I can trust this unseen power that is behind all physical life, all sentient life, that indeed is inherent in it? Can I trust it in a way that allows me to evolve and expand my experience? Do I trust God, even if I may call it spirit these days, or I may call it something else? But do I trust myself? That's the big one. Most people have a self-trust issue, which is why they find it hard to trust other people, because they don't trust themselves. And there may be some reasons for that, for some past behaviors, but we want to let go of all that. Part of spiritual growth we call forgiving ourselves, but it's more about releasing our sense of self that created the bad behaviors or the negative behaviors or the limited behaviors of the past. Behind our behavior, there's a story, right? So the person is never evil or bad. There's a story that they're living out, just trying to get their good. Well, one of the tenets of this teaching that I really love is that none of us are ever really trying to hurt ourselves. We're always trying to get our good. And if we're not real skilled at how that comes about, we'll try just about anything to get our good, right? Emma Curtis Hopkins said, everybody's saying the same thing unconsciously. There's good for me, and I ought to have it. And so in our teaching, the crack in the egg story is that we say, this is how you get it. Rethink things. Change your mind. Tell a new story about who you are. So who do we trust? If all the power lies within us, shouldn't we trust ourselves? Trust our intuition, our deeper knowing, our sense of being led and guided by our own higher intelligence. You know, sometimes that's the only thing you got going is the sense that you are greater than you even think you are. And that listen to that self for a while. That's the self we contact in meditation. And that's why when you are a regular meditator, you develop a natural sense of well-being because you put yourself in contact with your own higher self, your own nature. And it's very healing. And so sometimes you just call that forth. You know, you'll just say, all right, self, I'm choosing now to step out of the story I've been telling myself and see what you have to say. This self that was born in this physical life completely clean and beautiful and filled with promise and integrity and hope and boundless possibility. That's the self I'm speaking with today. And you can do this. You know, in psychological circles, they say talk to your inner child. I'm telling you, talk to your spiritual self. Talk to your spiritual adult. That inner child's a little brat. And you got to bring him or her up to date. But the spiritual self is like your personal angel. And that's what people call them, angels. They call them guides. They make up all sorts of personas, but it's really your true self, the incarnation of spirit that we actually are, that is actually behind this form and generating it. Talk to that self. Say, what is my true story? You know, who can I trust? And that's what sets us free, our natural self. And it's the core, the essence, the essential self. And it's always looking, if you will, to elevate our physical life. In other words, we could say, if we want to put it in anthropomorphic terms, that spirit only wants us to be happy, healthy, wealthy, wise, and having fun. There's only one reason for life to happen. It's for joy and for love and for expression. And so can we trust ourselves enough to say yes to that and see what happens? If you know the little song, I let the joy wash over me, I let the love wash. Well, how about letting it arise out of us? How about letting it move us around a little bit? Have its way with it, with us. I always say, love, have your way with me. Joy, have your way with me. See where it takes us. Trust it. And trust the commands you make. A good affirmation, and I invite you to say this out loud. I place my wholehearted trust in the power that makes all things new. In the power that makes all things new. There is one. I didn't expect you to say that, but that always happens. There is a power that makes all things new. Some people call it God. Some people call it Spirit. Some people call it Allah. Some people call it Muhammad. Some people call it Buddha. Some people call it Jesus. It's bigger than any of those. It's nameless, but it's real. And it cracks those eggs, and we kick ourselves out of limitation when we call on it. The power that makes all things new wants our wholehearted trust. I love the word wholehearted. It's the opposite of half-assed. Right. So she said sperm and ovum, so I can say half-assed. Of course, she's a doctor, and that makes it okay. She's sitting there with her eyes shut. Yeah. Okay, what happens in the process is we lift ourselves out of fate into destiny. You see, stories are fate. If we live our story, we're fated to experience it. And we live a fatalistic life of that's just the way it is. But once you start questioning your story and start writing a new one, you move into your destiny. And our destiny is to live wholeheartedly as Spirit wants us to. Happy, healthy, wise, joyful, prosperous, creative, celebratory, all the things that we really want for this world. We don't want them because they're not possible. We want them because they're alive in us trying to get out. We're trying to crack open this egg that the humanity's been living in for a very long time. In that egg is like war is inevitable. No, it's not. In fact, it's the dumbest thing we can do. It's the last resort. But it's been the first response, right? So things like that, we have to rethink those things and really vote for people who are cracking the egg, who have some new ideas and who have some desire to see humanity evolve and progress and take a big old leap, because we need to take a big old leap. Okay, so when we're moving from fate to destiny, we realize the only story Spirit or God has about us is ask, and it shall be given to you as you believe. That's God's story. How do we ask? By demanding, in a sense of, I am. I am love in action. I am prosperous. I am wealth. I am peace. I am joy. My life is a joy to behold. Say that out loud. My life is a joy to behold. And if it isn't, tell a new story. It's time to write a new script. Okay, so we all have a destiny, and that is to use our mind to create a life worth living, worth celebrating, and we have access to all the love we could ever desire. We have access to all the prosperity we can accept for ourselves and for each other. You know, Jesus said, the poor shall always be with us. He didn't say poverty will always be with us. He was talking about consciousness. He was talking about levels of awareness. There will always be an opportunity to raise awareness out of that state that we would call poor or limited into a higher level. But prosperity is the name of the game. Prosperity is what the universe is doing. There's nothing else happening but this amazing system of replenishing and creating and diversifying and multiplying. And it's just incredible what it's doing all the time. And so if we're missing out on that, we got a story that we need to change. We need to write this new story. So we have access to all the joy we could ever express. It's already there. It's in every newborn. You see little babies just squealing. It's joy. That's joy. They're happy to be here for a while. And then they get told a story, right? They get told a story that's kind of hard to live with. We have access to every creative idea we ever need for anything. You know, I call myself creative because my mother was extremely creative, and I just grew up that way, thinking you can make anything with your hands. If you need an idea, just ask for it. And so whenever I need a creative idea, I just say, give me an idea. It always pops. That's what it's supposed to do, is respond by corresponding. So I trust it. You see, I trust the creative process more than anything else in life. Because when you're involved in the creative process, you are co-partnering. You are partnering with God. That's co-creation, right? So our life is a creative process. Not just painting and writing music and putting up flowers. The creative process is our life. So let's get creative. Everybody ready to tell a new story to themselves? I'm serious. Are we? Okay. So the key is to start with a story of reality and put ourselves right in the center of it. Because see, we're not here looking at the universe. We are in it. We came from it. We're arising out of it all the time. We're not here as something separate from the source of life. We are here as the source of life expressing. So we want to really get this, that the great truths are about us. They're not some concept out there. They're about us. The story that we've been told is always up for renewal. It's up to us to create this opening. And the opening is, you know what? Maybe I don't know everything about this. Maybe I need some new information about relationships or about money or about anything. Just own it. I am open, let me say this out loud. I am open to revelations about the areas of my life that are really important to me. So whatever it could be, maybe you need a new idea about your body, about health. There's a lot of story about sickness and illness and health going around. A lot. I mean, just watch television, right? So maybe you need a new story about money. Maybe you need to know more about source, about supply, about how to handle it, about how to, whatever you need to know. Just say, I need a new story about, and then fill in the blank. I need a new story about being a parent, or being a child, being a daughter, being a son. Anything in your life where there's some, open to a new story. Some new information will come in for sure. All right, so Terry, if you'll join me, let's begin by solidifying these ideas in our mind with a little bit of storytelling. That's what a spiritual mind treatment is. And the story always begins with the power that is. The story always begins by recognizing that behind all of life there is something so perfect, so beautiful, so complete in itself that it could do nothing but erupt into visibility. It was so full, so absolutely filled with love and intelligence, it had to be seen. It had to become something. And so it became the universe. And all universes. It became everything in the universe. Everything in the universe is it, expressing some aspect of it. This is what we trust, that there is a pervasive intelligence in this universe, and it is alive in us, that this intelligence is in evidence as we look at the beautiful night sky, we look at a rainbow, we look at the oceans, we look at apples growing on trees. There is an incredible intelligence at work. And what is it doing? Producing versions of itself, that it might know what it is to be seen, to feel, to experience itself in form. That's you. That's me. That's your dog, your cat, the birds and the trees. It's everything. Spirit being everything for the joy of discovering itself as that thing. And so today, what do you want Spirit to discover through you? Trust that it can be. Trust that it is already so. Trust that as you believe, it is done through you. Tell the new story about who you are. Tell a new story about love. Tell a new story about supply, about everything. There is no power in this universe that is trying to hold us back. There is no law that says you shall not. It always says you shall. There is only one law, and it is the law of self-generation. We call it the law of attraction in this dimension. But we are generating all the time the story about ourselves. So today, I know for everyone here, there's something's moving in us. Something's moving in us that takes us to a higher level of awareness of who we are. Something moving in us that says, yes, I know there is a greater way for me to be in this world. I know there is more good for me than I have ever allowed myself to experience up until now. I know that I can have a relationship that dazzles me, that is so beautiful, so supportive, so much fun, so playful, juicy relationship. I know that's possible, and I give myself to that. I say, teach me what I need to know to allow it to happen. You see, any area of our life, that's what we're meant to be doing. Teach me, Spirit, crack this egg that I might let my heart be open to what really wants to happen as me. And so I know this morning, each one of us has, in some way, taken this in. It's working in us. It's giving us new ideas. And if we are patient and quiet this week, we will feel it. It'll come through our intuition. It'll say, read this book, call that person, go there. We will feel it as instincts. Forgive, let it go. Don't say anything. It will come to us as clear guidance. That's what I want to do. It'll come to us as a feeling of being in the presence of the most loving mother we could ever possibly have. This is the feminine aspect of God that acts as this angel within. And the masculine aspect of God acts as the protector of our ideas. And so as we have new ones, they are blessed by the mother and they are taken care of by the masculine. Let's let ourselves consider these new ideas and be grateful that we're here together. Be grateful for this beautiful place, this beautiful day, this wonderful city, and all the people who are seeking this truth. We know they are coming, they are attracted. This place is filled with eager souls, ready to write a new story. And so we begin again, we let it be, and we simply acknowledge it by saying, and so it is.